Super BS.
Oh, yeah. It's the internet's only gaming podcast, the Super BS Gamescast, a podcast about video games mostly. Sometimes we do take breaks and we call ourselves the Acolyte Season 2 podcast. Oh, wait, that's not happening.
Nice.
Oh, the knife. It's in there and it's too soon.
All the 5 Acolyte fans that listen to this podcast, the whole listenership is so angry right now, they just canceled their subscription.
Oh,
Okay.
The knife was actually watching it the entire series.
Yeah, my couch is full of knives. Okay, so today I'm joined here by the lovable baby boy, little boy, Brank.
Back from the day, ready to break some bread. Heck yeah.
Yeah, and a man that needs no introduction, Gerald Glassford of the Pop Culture Cosmos, Lakers Fast Break, and he probably has more podcasting hours put in than all of us combined, minus him, obviously. And I'm just a young adult, what do you call it, like a tot young man? Remember you use that terminology. And
you're a tot young man. I mean, we did call you despised one, but we will go back to the tot young man for today.
Jank, but in the professional world, I'm known as Josh the Great, as you can. Actually, this is not going to be video, but yeah, I'm Josh the Great. So,
as you can imagine, when you're imagining us talk and you could see our names below, that's what you can imagine right there.
Yeah, just imagine this is a video podcast, and you'll understand all of it. Anyways, today is actually we're going to be joined later, hopefully by one more person, but today's a special day. It's we're going to be talking about our favorite gaming memories. All of us have those memories that define our history as gamers, and I want to know what your guys' memories are, like things you look back on in your career as a gamer and you think like, man, that was good, or man, that was awful. But we're gonna go around and share some things. I got one that I want to start with. All right. So you guys obviously remember Fry's Electronics.
Yes.
Right? Okay. I used to. That was
so
like
does Jordan Peele.
Jordan.
I actually don't know that reference. What happened with Jordan Peele and Fry's Electronics?
Watch. Nope.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Yeah, Fry's had already closed down, essentially, and was just a skeleton. I think just online by the time that he got a hold of it, but he was able to go ahead and get access to a Fry's store, Fry's van, and yeah, that's the last I think memory of Fry's in any kind of real existence before they finally went. So
it was a sad day, but we knew it was going to come. I mean, they were all giant stores that had very few people purchasing things in them, but they were incredible.
You know, it was crazy though. Like when we were kids, I remember going to Fry's and it was packed. Like especially on like a Thursday or Friday night, like there was a ton of people in there.
This was before the digital age, though. I mean,
before the digital age, but it back when physical was king. Like you could go in there and they had just aisles and aisles full of video games.
I remember being a PlayStation. I used to go ahead and be a PlayStation rep at one point in time, and I'd work Best Buys and also Fry's. And going to Fry's, they would have the PlayStations all on pallets. And they'd have them right there in the middle of the store, and I would just be using my Move controller right around holiday time, just showing everybody about the Move controller and how fun it was, and they would just go flying off the shelves, just flying off that pallet, just people grabbing left and right those PlayStation. But it was the PlayStation 3s, just before PlayStation 4, really. So yeah, it was good times. It just a unique experience was Fry's.
Yeah, what's funny is like working at Best Buy, they had PlayStation 3s on pallets also, and they would always they did sell out really quick. But I think a lot of people, as we've talked about before, were not too fond of their PlayStation 3s eventually. So
Yeah, the dark ages for Sony.
Now they're worth something, especially the early ones. If you got
The
a
60 gig, I know. I wish I
Which
wouldn't
is
have gotten rid of
crazy.
mine for nothing because it was actually worth quite a bit because it has all the backwards compatibility.
Yep.
It's so great.
But it's such a garbagely put together console. I mean, I know I'm using garbage as a adjective, but it was such a terribly put together console. Like mine had the thermal paste inside melted after playing Resistance 2 for too long, and nobody could put it back together for me. So it just basically became a paperweight.
It's a heavy paperweight.
I know. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Fry's Electronics, I had been looking for forever for Spyro the Dragon, because you guys remember that game came out. PlayStation 1 is like $40. It originally appeared on a demo disc for PlayStation Magazine. So I played it and I was like, I really want to play this. I think I was 6th or 7th grade when that came out. But I remember going to Target because my mom was like, okay, well, it was a birthday present. So we went to Target to look for Spyro the Dragon. Completely sold out. We went to Toys R Us looking for Spyro the Dragon. Completely sold out. Then we finally went down to Fry's because like my mom was like, oh, hey, they sell video games. And I walk in there and I remember seeing like, they had the fountains and the big arches in there, the aisles of video games. They had everything. Like they had a whole, I've never seen that many PlayStation games in one place in my life. And you could go down. I remember seeing like Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy Anthology. They had seeing their Legend of Legaia, like all the big RPGs they carried in stock. And I remember getting to the place where Spyro was, and they had one copy left. And I snatched that copy up, and that felt like as a gamer, like I felt like I was on top of the world. So naturally I went home and I played it nonstop for the next like 4 or 5 weeks. And I think I beat that game like 100%ed it. Because you remember you could look at it and you have to get all like the diamonds and the find all the dragon statues and get all the eggs. But that was probably one of my fondest memories of gaming that I look back on and think, man, I wonder if I'm ever going to experience that again.
I just have to interject. I miss the days of like a game selling out. Like that concept that you just mentioned is hard for me to think of. Like anything that's not from an older generation, you could just buy a copy of the game digitally whenever. There's no more of a thought of like, oh, I need to actually buy this today or tomorrow or whenever. It's like, no, I'll just get it if I ever want, whenever I want, because it's all digital. Yeah, Fry's was, man, it's great. Such a great place with so many fun things there.
Well, and plus you like go to modern stores now and you look and there's hardly any gaming sections at all. They're down to like two little sections, and they've got maybe 3 rows of games. It's just you don't feel that anymore. It's the same, I guess the same concept with like toy stores and stuff, but
yeah,
that feeling that we got as kids walking into a place like Fry's will never be experienced by kids ever again.
Yeah, I not trying to bogart your entire memory, but I will say that idea, like they had something similar at Toys R Us, right? When you'd see the Zelda Ocarina of Time for the N64 when that was being displayed that Christmas, or you'd see the Dreamcast games on their little display. Like there was something special about that whole period of gaming because it was still like something where we didn't have the internet really in large quantities to see videos of games coming out. You'd have magazines, but you wouldn't see the games running anywhere unless you played them or at some friend's house. So it was special. It was like kind of magical to see that, right? See Spyro or see Final Fantasy 7. I still remember the first time I saw Final Fantasy 7 on a TV running way before I bought it and just being like, wait, what is this? I love this and all these characters.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's the same thing with like you had mentioned gaming magazines. Like we didn't have back then. There was YouTube was kind of a small thing, but you can go on. Most of what you saw for games was via these game magazines and demo discs. Like that's what got you excited for the stuff coming out. Now, even they don't even have those anymore.
Yeah, RIP Game Informer. Since our last episode, they closed their doors.
33 years, I believe, was in existence.
Crazy, yeah, 33 years. Such a sad thing. That's still one of my favorite gaming that and Nintendo Power are the 2 gaming magazines I remember the most.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So what do you guys got for me? Throw your favorite gaming memories at me. Let me hear these epic tales of game playing. And
Gerald hit us. We
How
gotta
far
hear
back
it.
do you guys want to go?
How far do you want to go, man? I mean, if you want to hit up
Take us.
that sweet NES stories, you know,
Oh my gosh,
or
older than
ooh,
that, my friend.
you
Because
wanna
I
talk
wasn't,
about the Atari.
I didn't get back into it until the N64, but I had previously my first console for my family and I was Pong. To
Oh
give you an
man,
idea how old I am, and then
21. That's how old he is.
there you go. And then for me also as well, playing Pong, you know, the very different variations was absolutely a blast at that point in time because it was something that we had never experienced at that point in time. But to evolve into something more high tech was just truly a blast because I remember my dad taking me to a store, a department store, no longer in existence, chain called the Treasury, and just going there, going through all the aisles to a special aisle for electronics to get none other than the Atari 2600, which again,
Oh wow.
to collectors out there, I'm just, it saddens me to see how worthless it is, despite the fact that it is so historic in the, you know, pantheon of video games. But yeah, getting that was, I know that everybody talks about the getting the N64 or the NES on Christmas, and you have those videos, you see those home films of the kids just, I got Nintendo. For me, that was my Nintendo moment, getting that Atari 2600 and just, you know, taking it home and playing with it, because I thought it was just incredible, just being able to experience like that. I had already gotten into the arcades by that time, and that was just something that I could bring that experience home. And yeah, I was heavy into gaming on both at home and at the arcades. It was just fantastic in doing so. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I understand that we, you know, the world does not look back on the Atari 2600 very kindly or very fondly, because it did lead to the video game crash of 1983. But I will say, for me, that period of time in the early 80s was absolutely wonderful time, and experiencing it both from a stand-up arcade style to the coffee tables that had just started coming out, to actually going ahead and playing it at home was just absolutely a lot of fun. Just truly a blast. Whether it was Combat, Indy 500, or whatever games that we were playing, Pitfall, you know, just the classics to me at that point in time are just truly good. And whenever I stop by our friends Josh at Retro City Games, or I see it on YouTube as far as collectors and whatnot, and they will walk by the Atari 2600 to get to the Nintendos of the world, as far as the NES, N64. Now, I love the N64 as well. I have great memories of that as well. But it's just sad to see where the Atari 2600 has fallen, because it to me, it just provided so many great memories.
Yeah, it was definitely like a prototype for what gaming became, right? Like, I don't know how many consoles there were before the 2600. I don't think there were many. I think there might have been one other one, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't know if it's Magnavox or, you know,
based, right?
Yeah, they all came afterwards. As far as once the Atari 2600 got put out there, everybody wanted to make something that was very similar. Like Sears had, I think, their own one eventually.
Sears.
Several different brands, and then of course it evolved into what, Intellivision, ColecoVision.
Yep.
I think ColecoVision was very underrated, by the way. Yeah, just absolutely, just fantastic gaming memories that time. It was just sad to see that, you know, the I'm hoping it's not a precursor for what may yet be to come in our video gaming world. I don't think it will be, but that crash where all of a sudden one day there are all these different gaming consoles and video games are such a major part of the toy area, and then the next day it was gone. And just because the fact that they just wanted nothing more, these retailers, to do with it once the bottom dropped out of it for a little while.
10 years from now, they're going to find a landfill in New Mexico, and it's going to be filled with copies of Madden in there.
Which year?
Yeah. There probably already is multiple landfills in Mexico filled with copies of Madden, depending on the years.
Or Best Buy last week. Well, Best Buy last week, it was only worth $10. So
And that was
Oh,
last year's
Yes.
Madden, not even like 6 years ago or 3 years ago or 2 years. No, I mean, games definitely is the physical game media as a whole, especially this generation, is worthless, right? Like, I can't even think of a single game that was printed in mass quantities that has any value. The ones that were printed by like small boutiques, like I Am 8-Bit, Limited Run Games,
Yeah.
they may gain value because they're printing small copies or small groups of it, right? Like small amounts, quantities. But yeah, overall, these Madden, Call of Duty, none of them are going to hold value. If they're worth
no.
pennies, that will be amazing, right? So I think
Yeah.
since you guys have given memories, I want to give one of my favorite memories that I remember for gaming. And this isn't like too far ago. This was actually kind of more recent than both of your memories. Was the year that Skyrim came out. I was living in Asia at the time, and it was illegal to buy games where I was in China. Like, they weren't allowed to sell it. So I had to buy a copy of Skyrim from Hong Kong and ship it over, and it took about a month and a half. And I remember when it came over, I had a break from the school where I taught at, and I played probably 100 hours of Skyrim in about a week and a half to 2 weeks. I think, if I remember correctly, I finished the entire game, like did all of the guilds plus all the main quests, and got 100% of the achievements at the time. And that
Did
was
you find
just such.
Lucky Argonian maid?
I found all the Lusty Argonian mates every
Oh
volume,
yeah.
okay? And I read them all. But no, it's there is something special about that game at that time specifically, because even though we had had Oblivion and Morrowind, and there had been other games that had done similar things, there was nothing on the scale of what Skyrim was. That was like this giant AAA RPG, and like, growing up, RPGs were nerdy, right? They were the same as anime. They were the same as these things. Like, you don't want to talk about RPGs. If you play games, you play a sports game or maybe a shooting game, right? Otherwise, you don't even really want to talk about gaming in general. But it was big, right? It was I know that Gerald's a fan of Mass Effect. It was of that era, right? Where these RPGs were coming out that were massive, that you would see Super Bowl ads. And Skyrim was the first one where I remember 11, 11, 11. They called their shot and they nailed it. Unlike Starfield, they did the exact thing they set out to do. And yeah, I'll never forget just that, like, gaming bliss. I've experienced it a few times in my life, but just that idea where it's like, oh yeah, I used to do other things. Now I just play Skyrim and like barely take care of myself.
And now you can experience it, Skyrim, on everything, including probably your vacuum.
Yeah, Alexa and refrigerator. Isn't it funny how they took what was a phenomenal game at the time, and then they essentially beat it to death in front of you by releasing it? Like, for
Oh my
me, there's something more greedy about it than Resident Evil 4, which has been released on everything as well, right? There's something about Skyrim that just feels a little bit more like, we want your money, give us your money, even more than Resident Evil 4, which is on, I think, more consoles than Skyrim. If not, it's close, right?
But I think it's because every time that they tried to do it and they transferred it to another system or another device, they would get a lot of media. Play Skyrim on this. Play Skyrim now on that.
I think I purchased like half of those Skyrim copies that came out, because I remember I had one on the Switch. I had it on the 360. I bought it on the Xbox Series X. I bought it on the PlayStation 4.
So I think they were also extra greedy with Skyrim because they sold it at full price every time. Half of those Resident Evil 4 copies that came out were sold at like $20 or $30, right? They were like, hey, this is an old copy. We didn't do much. It felt way less just gross in the long game, because it's like, okay, we had Resident Evil 4 on GameCube, PS2, and then Wii. After that, it was just like remasters or collections of it selling for $20 to $30 tops. Only the remake last year was the first one where they actually went full price again. And the VR one, but they were all so different. Whereas like Skyrim Switch, yeah, it was the first time you could play Skyrim portably, $60. Skyrim Series X, though, was also, I want to say, $50 or $60, or maybe not Series X, but the Xbox One of the ones that came out where it was barely anything new. I guess they added mods.
They
Was
yeah, they
also
added
full
the
price.
mods. That was the big pull for it, and, people paid for it still too.
Yeah, I mean, it just I don't know. There was always something that maybe felt just a little bit gross to me about it, but I still love the game. I don't think Skyrim sadly holds up very well nowadays. Every time I try to go back, I think, man, the combat is like swinging a butter knife and not hitting anybody, right? Like
It's
they
still
never
not as
really.
bad as Morrowind.
For me,
Yeah.
it was Oblivion, because I got, after 30 hours in Skyrim, I actually got stuck somewhere and I could
Oh,
never get
bug.
out of it. And I was just like, I said, the heck with this. Oblivion for me, I was one I played over 100 hours of, and I don't think I've actually ever finished the game. I think
Well,
I'm
you
gonna have
had
to go
to
ahead and do it.
you had to do the Oblivion gates first. That was the worst part of that game.
Yes.
If you didn't do that, they
Yes.
did the level scaling, so you actually couldn't beat the game because all the monsters in the Oblivion gates would be too hard. So I did the same
sprinted through
thing. I
so many of those gates.
God,
Yeah.
see, now I will pay more. I said this the other day. I will pay Phil Spencer more if they actually, the rumors were true, whatever was in the notes from the during the trial, and that there will be a remaster of Oblivion. He's got my money for it.
If they do a full remake, I'll pay $60. If it's a remaster, it needs to be like $30 tops. It's going to come to Game Pass, so at least, that will be
Yeah.
good, right? Unless they change their model. So it's like, okay, well, whatever. And then if it's got mods and stuff, maybe you can do it for 40 or 50. But I do think they need to be careful if they're not going to do a full graphics overhaul, especially because, like, I don't know if these games will come to fruition, but like Sky Oblivion, the mod that somebody's making, that's essentially Oblivion in an up-res Skyrim engine. These already exist, like kind of like Fallout London just came out for Fallout 4. There's stuff for people if you want to play on PC. I think a lot of us enjoy consoles because there's an ease of use to it. You don't have to worry about like all the difficulties setting it up. But yeah,
or paying to upgrade to like your video card.
oh yeah, or your CPU, right? Or
yeah.
like, why is my problem here? Like, what's this? That's the worst part about PC. That's why like I've stayed away from most PC stuff, is because which one do you need to upgrade, right? And if you upgrade all of it, it's $2,000. It's definitely not the price of a single console,
You're paying that on top of the game, the cost of the
Yeah.
game itself. What's funny is that you mentioned Skyrim. So when Skyrim came out, like I was at a point in my life where like I didn't have a lot going on. I wasn't married, didn't have kids. I worked at Best Buy. I had 2 or 3 days off a week, and I just sit at home and I would play ridiculous amounts of Skyrim. I think I put a good like 180 hours into that game by the time I was done. But that was the first game I think I'd ever played that like fully immersed me into that world. Like when you turned on Skyrim and you looked at that screen, wherever you were, whether you were at what was it, the White March or whatever it was, and the doing the little the side quests and all that, you were there. Like nothing else existed outside
Skyrim.
of that.
Skyrim was life.
Yeah, and they just had so many and you'd be walking around. There's so many dungeons that just lead to nowhere. Like, oh, what is this? There's a staircase here. Let me go down there. And then 8 hours later, you finally emerge back into the sunlight because this went underground under like half the map of the world.
And just think about how good that theme is, right? Like that guy sadly got canceled. So it's like, we will probably not get another theme as good as that Skyrim theme. I mean, that's a theme that's so good that my wife, who doesn't even like video games, likes that song. She actually listens. That's the Dovahkiin song.
Right. And
it's just incredibly good.
Iconic. Yeah. Even today, I still look. I haven't played a game like that since Skyrim came out. And I sit there thinking every time a new game comes out that's an RPG or looks like Skyrim, I keep wondering, is this going to be the next Skyrim? And there's nothing has been released like that since Skyrim came out.
Yeah, I mean, there's been for me the closest thing I've spent that much time with was Tears of the Kingdom last year. I mean, I put 160 hours into that game within 3 or 4 weeks. But I mean, there are very few things in life I think that were as defining at that moment. I mean, but I'll be real. There was so many cool things coming out within those 2 years. We had Skyrim, we had BioShock Infinite, we had Grand Theft Auto 5. I mean, it was Mass Effect 3 came out like the spring after. It was like a murderer's row of just incredible content coming out all the time. This is not trying to derail us from moments and memories, but like the sad thing for me when I think of Skyrim, and I think one of the reasons why I still think of it as a memory is like that's back before games took 6-7 years to make. Even though we'll get these moments where we're going to get a lot of good games at a time, like last year and the year before, very few of those games are coming from similar studios. right? Like that was still at that time where you could see a Halo game could come out every year or every other year, right? Like we had Halo 3, ODST, Reach, and 4 within what, 5 years? Was it 5 or
Yeah.
6 years?
Yeah.
And now we've had what, in 10 years since we've had 2 games.
2 games. Yeah. Yeah, that's
So,
crazy because it's the cost and production time, and back then they didn't really care about like studio crunch or whatever
nope.
the devs complain about now. And not that they don't have the right to complain about that. So
No,
I
it
mean,
should be able to complain, but it stinks that in the end, like the whole gaming industry has changed so much that, yeah, because I do think, as somebody who's done art projects, I do think some people like to crunch. When I do an art project, I definitely know that, like, I get it's different because it's somebody's job, but I know that probably a lot of these people chose gaming because they wanted to make a game, because they want to be creative. And yeah, that's probably harder as you get older. And it's probably harder if you get more responsibilities, but I'm sure there's a handful of people who would like to crunch if they can, you
yeah,
know?
it's
I
when
think
you're
if it's an option,
alive.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a big deal.
All right, so I got another one for you. Right, I was waiting for Big Dog, but he's having computer issues. He said he can't get on tonight, so
Okay, no worries.
I'm just gonna throw it out there. All right, Gears. Do you guys okay? Back. What was it like? I think we were a couple years out of high school when this happened, but there was like a barrage of horde modes coming out on games. You had Halo ODST had the what do you call it? It wasn't
Firefight, but
Fire.
honestly, Gears was first.
Gears
was
of War 2.
Was
yeah,
it?
Gears
Yeah.
of War 2 was the first horde
Yes.
mode.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So Gears of War 2, me and Big Dog and my brother. All right. We played. There was an achievement. So we played a lot of the horde mode. Like every night we were playing hordes. But there's an achievement for surviving 99 rounds of horde. And so one day, none of us had work. We were all off. We're like, you know what? Let's sit here and let's do this. All right. So we sat there and we played horde. I want to say it was a good like 5 or 6 hours it took us, because the
Wow.
matches were short. They're about, I want to say the matches were less than 10 minutes each, but we sat there and we played horde until we had reached that 99 round. On the 99th round, my brother's Xbox froze right before the match.
No way.
Yes, it froze. And so I'm sitting in my room talking to Big Dog, who's at his house, and you're playing over live, and here my brother just let out so many expletives all at once. I'm like, what happened? And the Xbox froze. He got booted out. I got the achievement. Big Dog got the achievement, but Justin did not get the achievement. And
man.
he's like, I'm done. That was the last time my brother ever played video games. Like
Really?
that's how bad that experience was for him.
Your brother doesn't play games because of that.
Because of that, yeah. And I'm sure it has something to do with his wife or whatever. But he just didn't play video games anymore after that, and that makes me deeply sad. And if I could go back and give him my Xbox achievement for that 99 rounds of horde, I would totally do it.
You're a good big bro, man.
There you go.
I know.
Gerald Hiss with another great memory.
I could give you one. I mentioned it a couple weeks ago on the Cosmos, but I mentioned it before to Josh. I used to work in special effects background before I moved it to Las Vegas. I worked for a couple different special effects companies, Boss Film Studios and Pacific Data Images. The first job was with Pacific Data Images, and the job I had entailed doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, transferring as far as the shots that were needed or the shots that were created from one medium to another, from digital to film, and then back again, stuff like that, depending on what was needed. So sometimes that would require a lot of coding. And then obviously it would also require a lot of processing by the actual computers, whether they were the huge $10,000 to $15,000 silicon graphics workstations or the actual film recorder itself. It would take hours sometimes to process, which would leave you some time to play some games.
Yeah.
And one of the things we'd like to do every now and then was get together, and Doom in the I'd say around 93, 94 was starting to get a little bit more popular because it had come out obviously through the shareware to all the PCs, and everybody really got into it. one of the ways we decided to spend some time was going ahead and getting like all these expensive SGI workstations to get, at different floors, different rooms, hooking up on a LAN. This was just before, everybody really got popular with the internet and things of that nature. So we would hook them together on a LAN, a local area network, and just death match for hours on end. And it's funny because, some of my people that I was playing with, at that time were either in the same vocation as I was, or they were animators or things like that. One of them was eventually, just a few years later, would become the director of Shrek and Andrew Adams.
Oh, wow.
So it was always funny because he always had that long ponytail. He's I think he's from New Zealand, if memory serves correct. Yes, he got that
tell
accent.
by looking at him, you're like, this guy loves ogres for sure.
This guy's gonna be great someday.
He was
He's
quiet.
Gonna mix it with donkeys.
He was very quiet, but he was very polite. But he was cool when you did try to get to talk to him and get to know him a little bit. But friends that now work at Pixar. Yeah, we were always, whenever some downtime, let's go play some Doom. So those matches were really fun because again, these huge workstations were not meant to really be for LAN gaming, but hey, you got to improvise and kill time somehow. You're there for 10, 12 hours sometimes. So just absolutely was a blast every now and then to go ahead and do just
Did you guys play just Doom? Did you play Quake? Did you get to Half-Life? Like, how long did you guys do these LAN parties for?
It was only for a short period of time, about just during, I forget which movie it was for, because we would actually we actually covered a lot of movies during my time there, just because a lot of them were just, okay, we need you guys for just a couple shots or 3 or 4 shots to do something, and then that's it for the most part. But it was probably about maybe 4 to 6 months at most, because it was a transient industry as far as people coming and going, and getting either jobs somewhere else in the industry or whatnot. So it wasn't for that long, but I do remember it because it's like everybody would that was there when the big bosses were away, be like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and play some Doom. All right, sounds good to me.
What's funny is that kind of reminds me of the whole LAN experience. Like the first time I ever walked into one of those like internet cafes, where they played Counter-Strike. I remember I was in the 5th grade, and people had always, like, there's a stigma associated with like gamers, like, oh, they're all they sit in front of their computers in a dark room and they type on the keyboard and drink Mountain Dew or whatever. And I remember I'm like, no, that's
we love Mountain Dew.
like games, And then I remember the first time I walked into a gaming cafe like that. It was over by Target on Catella, and I walked in there, and it was exactly how everybody said it was. There's just a bunch of people like huddled in front of computers, and they had like pizza and stuff up on the monitor, and there's a guy at the counter. Yeah, he was selling like Snickers and Skittles and stuff, like the snack packs you get from Costco, and he had his own computer and he's playing Counter-Strike also. And I sat there thinking, I'm like, maybe I guess all the stigmas do really start somewhere, don't they?
That's good living, man. Those people are clean living. That's what they say when people say eat organic. They're talking about Mountain Dew and pizza on top of a computer screen. And that's what I try to live my life.
Yeah.
I do the do, man. That's what I'm all about. Gotta have it your way. So I'm going to give you guys another great gaming memory. Waking up September 9th, 1999, I look over my bed and there is a bag next to it. Oh, what's inside that bag? An orange box. And if you know what day this is, it is the day that the Sega Dreamcast was sold in the US. And I had one of the first copies of that thing with the Sonic Adventure and the Sega Bass Fishing, which were the 2 games I had with the fishing rod, the digital fishing rod. If you play that game, it was honestly, I still have so many good memories of the Dreamcast. I think because I got it at launch, it was the first console I had ever received at launch at that point. I think I didn't get another one till probably honestly just recently, probably the Xbox Series X and PS5 and Xbox one around then. Before that, I got most consoles either for birthdays or Christmases or after they came out when they went on a small discounted sale. I didn't. I mean, Switch was the first one I really remember waiting outside for. But yeah, Sega Dreamcast. It was so much fun. And I still think about Shenmue and Power Stone and Phantasy Star Online and all of the great titles that poor, sad Death to Sega console that only had a year and a half on market.
I don't understand why people hated that console so much. Like, I thought that it was actually pretty cool.
PlayStation had the mind share at that time. I mean, it was right before the PS2 came out. The PlayStation 1 was in its heyday, and the Nintendo has always had Nintendo fans, right? So it's like, where's the place for Sega? And they also had burned so many bridges. I mean, Sega did an Xbox One, right? Sega Saturn was something that people reviled. They released it at a conference, so all of the stores couldn't get it in stock. So a lot of people were angry at them. It was $500, where I want to say the PlayStation 1 came out at like $300 or something. It was like a huge price difference. So yeah, nobody cared about the Saturn, and that was 4 years of Sega. I want to say that was 95 to 99 was what Sega was doing. So it's really hard to recover. I mean, we're seeing that literally with Microsoft, one of the richest companies on the planet, and the Xbox, right? It is hard to recover when you make a big mistake. Sony somehow did it, and I think it's only because they had two insanely popular consoles beforehand. I think it was only because the PS1, the PS2. Otherwise, I think they would have the PS3 would have been their death as well.
Yeah. So it's the Sony had actually, that was kind of the PlayStation coming out was kind of like a slap to the face to say it, because remember, Sony had gone to Sega before the PlayStation.
Nintendo.
They went to Sega too. They went to Sega, and Sega turned them down. They went to Nintendo, and Nintendo turned them down. And then they put this console out on the market because everyone was like, "No, disc-based games, that's crazy." And all of a sudden, boom! It started an entire thing, and I can confidently say it changed the landscape of gaming forever.
Yeah, Sega also, you have to remember, made so many crazy decisions, right? Like the Sega Genesis had a CD add-on as well as a 32X add-on, which I don't totally know how that worked, where you would add them to the console. Like they were doing stuff. What?
It added pixels, the 32X. You put it in, and it added pixels to.
But it's just, I mean, you think about that at that time, that was hard to sell, right? Like think about the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge, where you would put that and you'd put other cartridges in it. Like I remember as a kid even being confused as to like, wait, what was this? And then like you do it and you're like, okay. So they were doing cool stuff. They always have done stuff. You think about the Game Gear and how much better it is actually than the Game Boy, right? As like just a console in terms of like what it can do graphically, the games you were able to play on it. The Game Gear was way better. The problem is it ate 1 billion batteries and it had the battery life of like 2 hours. So they were always doing cool stuff, but it was always backed by they were ahead of their time, I think, almost always. And that doesn't pay a lot of time. You have to kind of be right in your time.
You're right. Trends,
think about the Xbox One again. Think about ahead of your time, right? All digital future, family sharing, all the things that we now come to expect in games. Everybody said no way when they announced that stuff, right? They're like, oh, you can't have, your games are going to be one-time use. People aren't going to like this. But they had a plan to let you share games with 10 family members. Like that was insane. And obviously, nobody liked that because in all digital future, we weren't ready for digital at that time. Sony killed it by just passing a PlayStation game back and forth to themselves, saying this is how you share games.
Right.
And that was it. I mean, they already had all the fans from PS3 and PS2 and PS1. So all they needed to do was piss off all the people who just wanted to go to Walmart and Target to buy a game. And that's exactly what they did.
And they did. Yeah. Yeah. Success. All right. I got one for you. So after the original Xbox came out, like I got that as a graduation present in middle school. And I remember, so I graduated 8th grade, went home, we got that graduation party, and sitting on the table, there's the original Xbox with Halo, copy of Halo next to it. After that, I kind of fell out of games for a little bit. I don't know. I don't remember why at the moment, but I just remember there was like a gap there, and I didn't play anything else. Like I played a few things on the Xbox, and I did obviously like through the LAN party phases and all that, but I didn't buy anything. There weren't any games that I remember playing that I was like, oh, that's really memorable for me. And then the 360 came out, and everyone kept recommending Mass Effect to me.
Hmm.
All right, and Gerald, I know you're a fan. Everyone kept saying, you got to play Mass Effect. It's amazing. You got to play Mass Effect. But to me, like when people recommend things to me over and over again, I'm like, I get annoyed and I don't want to do it. Same thing. That's
Like
why I've
TV
never.
shows.
Yeah, it's the reason I've never watched Breaking Bad, and I know people love that show, and one day I will watch it. But
It's great.
yeah. So finally, I picked up Mass Effect, and the game just like it blew me away. I sat down in the morning to play it, and I don't think I like re-emerged from my bedroom. Well, I came out to get food and go to the bathroom, obviously, but I don't think I like re-emerged, like take a breath of fresh air till about 9 o'clock at night that day. And I had like my beard had magically grown in that time.
Santa Claus, you Santa Claus yourself.
Yeah, it felt like I'd been in there for years, and I just walked out, and I'm like, wow, that was they're right about that, because just that opening, there's the opening scene, you get thrown into that firefight on that planet, and then they almost force you to interact with literally everything in the Citadel before you are able to move on with the game. Remember, you have to go explore all the stuff, talk to all the aliens. It takes so many hours to get out of, and you're like, I just don't want to do this anymore. But by the time you get out of that, you're committed. They do a good job at like pulling you in. And that was I remember just sitting there thinking to myself, like, wow, what an experience. I don't know why I did not play this sooner.
Controversial opinion. I still think Mass Effect 1's the best out of the three.
Oh, absolutely.
It's my favorite by far. I was pretty upset when they removed most of the RPG elements from 2. I thought 2 was an incredible story and a phenomenal game, and I loved it when it came out. And then 3, I have never finished. As somebody who literally flew back and stayed, I had to come back for a wedding, and I stayed an extra week in the US so I could pick up Mass Effect 3. And I tried turning it on, and I had chosen one of the character face models that they had not imported into Mass Effect 3. And I waited for 3 months. And then by the time it was done, I didn't care. And all the controversy had already come out with the endings. And I didn't read. I still don't know how Mass Effect 3 ends. And I maybe someday will go back and finish it. But it's just so crazy that I love that series so much. But I still think the best game, in my opinion, is 1.
You still haven't chosen a color yet.
I never chose the color, man. And I will never know.
I could tell you, for me, that Mass Effect time, I was really caught into the hype because that was, for me, one of my best favorite gaming memories is running a game store, actually a couple game stores over the course of 2007 to 2008. 2007 is probably the best year ever for video games. I don't think there's any question on that. And anybody wants to challenge me on it, I'll just run down a list of games that are still effective today, that are still part of today's consciousness in the world of gaming, and seeing the hype as far as for Uncharted. So I got a lot of videos in advance for my store. It was great, but the Mass Effect, to me, was the one that everybody needed to get into. There were like hour-long documentaries, prepping you for the game. There was a ton of videos that were coming out. I was putting it up on the screen and getting a ton of pre-orders for it, which at that time, when pre-orders were a thing.
Yep, that's what we all did so we could get the game.
So
every time you go to GameStop, they bother you. Don't you want to pre-order these 10 things before you leave?
Exactly. So it was just amazing time, and you could see that Mass Effect was going to be a hit. I mean, I would convince people to pre-order it just by talking to them, just by sharing the enthusiasm I had, because you could see it was one of those few times where, whatever hype machine that you want to go through, and these days now it's just the usual standard CG trailer first, a few months later gameplay trailer, then a release trailer, and it's just like, okay, that's it. That's pretty much the standard, operating procedure. Back then, it was, if you really wanted to go ahead and promote a game, follow the way that Mass Effect was promoted up into late 2006 to its release in 2007, and you'll really get a good idea of how well a game could be promoted. And yes, I do have some of the promotional materials behind me that I got to keep from the store. But yeah, like you, Brank, it left, especially Mass Effect 1, left such an impression on me. And I was just so happy that the experience I had, gameplay issues that everybody has with it aside, I still am such a fan of Mass Effect 1 and myself as well. It just was such an incredible experience, and it lived up to all the hype I was giving it at the store.
It also gave you choices that I know that 2 gives you choices and stuff, but nothing felt like it had the weight of 1, and it was all new. I mean, it's there's
Ashley
something
Arcade.
special. Yes. Oh, I mean, right on the Rift, right? You have to choose almost immediately
Who
what you're
lives
gonna
and who
do.
dies?
And then you have the other choice with Rex, right?
Yes.
Like a little bit later. There's so many big decisions, and it was such an RPG, and it was something that like they didn't really do great jobs of like RPGs that were both really good action games, but also had RPG mechanics. I mean, they were starting to do that. Obviously, we talked about Oblivion and stuff, but there were still like few and far between. We were still kind of at that turn-based era. Everything isn't like it is today where every game's an RPG. So it was pretty impressive to be able to see that and stuff. But
Yeah, well, that was also the first time I ever experienced the romance in the game. Like you actually got achievements for like romancing people within. I'd never ever come across anything like that in a game before, and so that kind of I would say I could say with confidence that actually shaped a lot of the games that are coming out in the 2020s.
And your life. It shaped who you married. It's shaped everything you've done. I mean, it's
Before I married a spree, I was like, okay, what side quest do I need to do to make this official?
Yeah, you were trying to marry Ashley, but you were, do I go with Miranda? Do I go with Ashley? That's how you're doing playthroughs, man, of your life
What
to
can
try to
you
figure it
add
out.
to my stats to if we get
What
married,
is
what can you add to my stats?
what's your loyalty quest? Because I don't know if I want to do it with you, okay? I'll see what other loyalty quests I have, because certain loyalty quests I just don't enjoy.
Yes.
Okay, we should probably wrap up, my boys. I'm getting super tired. Do we want to do one more around the horn, or should we call it a Betty bye early? Because some of these baby boy branks got to get
I'd
some
like
sleep.
to do this again.
I'm down.
All
I'm
right.
down to do
Yeah.
another one.
All right. Well,
Should
should
do a
we
part 2?
maybe we'll call it and we'll do a part 2 maybe like next week or something.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Nice.
Sounds
good.
I'm
Yeah.
game.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of the Super BS Games Cast, a podcast about the Acolyte Season 2 and video games. Thank you for tuning in.
Rest in
We'll
peace.
catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.